There's a kind of peace you only find in the rural South. Miles of cornfields breathing in the wind, dirt roads that remember every tire mark, and houses sitting so far apart you can hear a dog bark 2 miles down. Michael had grown up with that peace. He was 20, tall, quiet, and used to the kind of silence that other people found unsettling. That afternoon, the sky had the color of dying embers, not quite sunset, not quite evening, just that strange moment where the world holds its breath. Michael was standing in front of his house, leaning against the porch railing, watching the tree leaves sway beyond the fields. And then, he saw movement. At first, it was just a shape between the trunks. A figure, stumbling, shoulders hunched, arms pumping like he was running for his life. Michael squinted, trying to make sense of it. A few seconds later, he recognized the man. Mr. Harris, the neighbor who lived 3 miles down the dirt road. A quiet, friendly man in his mid-50s, someone who waved every time their trucks crossed paths. But the man running toward him now was not the same man Michael knew. His clothes were smeared with dust, shirt half torn, his face pale like he had seen something that ripped the soul clean out of him. He kept glancing over his shoulder, a look so frantic, so full of raw terror, it froze the breath in Michael's chest. Michael took a step forward, hand lifted slightly. "Mr. Harris, you okay?" But Harris didn't answer, didn't even slow down. He just kept running, stumbling through the grass, gasping for breath. And then, Michael saw it. Behind Mr. Harris, still half lost in the shadows of the forest, something moved. Something tall, thin, wrong. At first, it looked like a stretched human silhouette, pitch black, darker than the shadows around it, as if the darkness itself had condensed into a shape. It slid between the trees, without disturbing a single leaf. And the worst part, the part that made Michael's skin crawl, was that its feet never touched the ground. It floated, smoothly, silently, like it was gliding after the terrified man. Michael froze. The human brain tries to rationalize things, to explain away what it cannot accept. A trick of the light, smoke, a hallucination. But Michael knew instantly, this wasn't any of those. This thing, this shadow, moved with intention. Mr. Harris was maybe 30 feet away now. He reached the edge of the dirt road, right in front of Michael's fence, and then, his knees buckled. He collapsed face first into the dust. Michael's instincts kicked in. He rushed forward. "Mr. Harris, Harris, what happened? Are you hurt?" But just as he reached out, he felt it. A cold pressure, not touching his skin, but hovering behind him, like being watched by something that didn't blink. Michael turned his head slowly. The shadow figure had stopped at the tree line, right where the sunlight met the forest's shade. It stood there, long, tall, twisted, almost like it was testing the boundary between dark and light. Then, it stilled, completely, as if it were studying him. Michael swallowed hard, a chill crawling the length of his spine. He didn't know how, but he could feel its eyes, though the silhouette had no face. Mr. Harris was shaking now, coughing, trying to speak. His voice came out broken, shredded by fear. "Don't look at it. Don't let it follow you out here." Michael crouched beside him. "Harris, what happened? What's in the woods?" Harris grabbed Michael's wrist, ice-cold fingers digging in desperately. "It followed me out. It's not." He sucked in a ragged breath. "It's not a man." And then, the crunch of tires on gravel. A dusty pickup truck swerved to a stop. The door slammed open, and a frantic woman rushed out. Mrs. Ellen Harris. Her face turned ghost white when she saw her husband collapsed on the ground. "Oh my God, Harris!" She fell to her knees, hooking her arms under him. "Help me get him in the truck, now." Michael snapped back to reality and helped lift the man. As they carried Harris, he looked once more toward the tree-line. The shadow was gone, vanished, like it had slipped deeper into the woods the moment Ellen arrived. But the feeling didn't leave. The feeling of being watched. Even as the truck tore down the road, dust trailing behind, Michael couldn't shake the chill settling in his bones. Whatever that thing was, it had come right to the edge of the forest, like it wanted to step out, like it was waiting. And for the first time in his life, Michael felt terrified of the land he had grown up on. Night in rural Tennessee comes faster than people expect. One moment the sky is a deep orange glow, and the next, the world is nothing but silhouettes and cold air. And on the night following Mr. Harris's collapse, the darkness felt heavier than usual. Michael couldn't stop replaying the scene in his mind. The way Harris had run, the way the shadow had hovered, silent, watching, as if it understood them. He barely touched his dinner. Sat on the porch for hours after sunset, listening to every sound the woods made. Normally, the chirping of crickets and the rustle of wind through the treetops felt comforting. But tonight, every sound carried something else beneath it. A rhythm, a pattern, like footsteps just a little too heavy, a little too slow, pacing along the edge of the forest. Michael finally stood up, rubbing his temples. "Get a grip," he muttered. He tried to convince himself he was imagining things. But then, a thud. Soft, distant, but clear. It came from the tree-line. Michael froze. His breath hitched slightly. Another thud. Then another. Slow, steady, deliberate, almost like something was walking, but not toward him, not away from him, just pacing, back and forth, back and forth. He felt that cold pressure again, the eerie sense of being watched. He stepped backward toward his front door when suddenly, a high-pitched bark shattered the night. It was Bo, the neighbor's hound, tied up next door. Bo almost never barked at night, and never like this. This was not a warning bark. It was fear. Michael squinted, trying to see through the darkness. "Bo, you good boy." The dog barked again, louder, harsher, and then began growling at the woods. Growling at something Michael couldn't see. A chill ran down his spine. Animals always sense things before humans did. Michael stepped closer to the porch rail, eyes narrowed as he stared into the black line of trees. The wind died completely. The night went still, unnaturally still. Even the crickets stopped. And then, from deep inside the forest, a sound floated out. Not a growl, not a whisper, not a human voice. It was something in between. A low, dragging hiss, like air being pulled through teeth. Long, slow, and impossibly cold. Bo yelped, then suddenly fell silent. Michael's heart hammered in his chest. That was enough for him. He rushed inside the house, locked the door, locked the windows, even though locks didn't feel like they mattered right now. Inside, the silence was suffocating. He tried to distract himself, turned on the radio, scrolled through his phone, but every few minutes he thought he heard something outside. A soft scrape, a tap on the siding, a shift of weight on the gravel walkway. He forced himself not to look. Hours passed. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and he fell asleep on the couch with a lamp still on. Morning came with a faint orange light seeping through the curtains. Michael blinked awake, head heavy, and pushed himself upright. For a moment, he thought everything had been a nightmare. Just nerves. Just fear messing with his mind. But then he stepped outside, and he saw them. Footprints. Not shoe prints. Not animal tracks. Footprints, shaped like a person's but wrong. Far too long, far too narrow, and spaced in impossible distances, like each step stretched unnaturally far. They started at the edge of the forest, and ended right at the base of his porch steps. Michael felt his skin crawl. He crouched down, touching the dirt. The prints weren't sunk deep, whatever made them didn't seem heavy, almost like it barely touched the ground. But the shape, the elongated heel, the twisted curve of the arch, it was the same silhouette he saw behind Mr. Harris. He stood up quickly, heartbeat quickening. Just then, he heard a truck engine rumble down the road. A familiar blue pickup pulled into view, Mrs. Ellen Harris. She stopped in front of Michael's fence, stepped out, and gave him a tired, strained look. "Michael, can we talk?" He nodded, swallowing hard. She walked closer, voice low, shaky. "Thank you for helping yesterday. I took Harris to the clinic at Millfield. But..." She hesitated, eyes darting toward the forest. "He hasn't been the same since." Michael frowned. "What do you mean?" Ellen exhaled sharply, like she'd been holding her breath all night. "He keeps repeating the same thing," she whispered. "Over and over again." Michael leaned in. "What did he say?" Ellen closed her eyes for a moment. "He keeps saying, 'It followed me. It's still here. Don't let it step out of the trees.'" A long silence settled between them. Then Ellen lowered her voice even further. "Michael, my husband has been hunting those woods for 30 years, and I've never seen fear like this in him." She glanced at the forest again. "And I don't think, whatever he saw, is done." Michael's mouth went dry. Because Ellen didn't know, she couldn't know what he had heard last night. The pacing, the hiss, the footprints at his doorstep. He forced a steady breath. "Ellen." His voice faltered. "I think it came to my house." Ellen's face drained of color. "What?" Michael nodded slowly. And before she could respond, Bo, the neighbor's dog, let out a distant, terrified howl from behind the next property. A howl that wasn't fear of coyote or bear, but something else. Something watching. Something waiting. Fear changes a person. It settles into the bones, into the breath, into the silence between each heartbeat. And by the time Bo's terrified howl faded across the fields, Michael knew one thing for certain. Whatever followed Mr. Harris out of the woods was still here, still watching. He felt Ellen's eyes on him, wide and brimming with the kind of fear that doesn't fade at sunrise. "Michael," she whispered, voice trembling. "What do you mean it came to your house?" He swallowed hard. There were sounds last night. Footsteps in the tree-line. Something pacing. He paused. "And I found footprints this morning. Right up to my porch." Ellen's hands flew to her mouth. "Oh God!" For a moment, neither of them spoke. The breeze brushed gently across the fields, but it didn't feel like a comforting wind anymore. It felt like something exhaling, something watching them from the darkness of the tree line. Michael forced himself to speak. "Ellen, do you know anything about what Harris saw? Did he say anything else?" She shook her head slowly. "No. Just that something was in the woods. Something that moved wrong. Something that shouldn't be alive." Michael's stomach tightened. She took another shaky breath. And then, at the clinic, he grabbed the nurse by the arm and started screaming. Her voice cracked. He kept yelling, "Don't let it step out of the trees. Don't let it walk in the light." Michael felt a chill run up the back of his neck, because that meant one thing. Harris believed the creature was trying to cross some boundary, that once it stepped fully out of the forest, fully into the open world, it wouldn't stop. Ellen's voice broke through his thoughts. "I don't want to be here after sundown. Not anymore." Her eyes glistened. Harris used to laugh at ghost stories. Now he won't even look at a window. Michael nodded slowly. "I understand." But as Ellen stepped toward her truck, she stopped, staring at the ground near the fence. "Michael." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Those footprints, they weren't here yesterday." Michael followed her gaze. The dirt by the fence had faint, unnatural impressions, stretching long, narrow, warped, like someone had dragged an inhuman shadow across the ground. He forced himself not to look at the trees. Ellen opened her truck door with trembling hands. "If you see it again," she swallowed. "Don't go outside. Don't try to talk to it. Don't even look at it." And then she drove off, tires kicking up dust as if she couldn't get away fast enough. Michael stood alone for a long moment. The morning sun felt weak, thin, unable to chase away whatever lingered beyond the tree line. Finally, he turned back toward his house. But just as he climbed the porch steps, he heard it. A faint whisper. Not human. Not wind. Something else. Something aware. It crept out from the forest like a breath sliding over glass. A long, dragging hiss, stretching into a low, distorted murmur, almost like a voice trying to form a word. Michael froze, blood turning cold. He knew that sound. It was the same hiss he heard last night, the same pressure in the air, the same sensation of eyes watching him from between the trees. Very slowly, he turned his head toward the forest, and his breath caught in his throat, because there, between two tall oaks, in the darkest wedge of shade, something moved. A shape, tall, thin, like a human shadow stretched out of proportion. But this time, its head tilted slightly, as if it was listening, as if it was curious about him. Michael stumbled back instinctively. The figure didn't advance, didn't glide forward. It simply hovered in the darkness, motionless, except for the slightest, subtle tilting of its elongated head. He whispered aloud without meaning to, "What are you?" The shadow shifted, just once, not forward, but upward, like its spine stretched silently, vertebrae elongating in a way no living creature should. Michael's breath stuttered. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. The shadow stilled again, watching, listening. Then, a distant sound snapped it. A truck door slammed in the neighbor's yard. In that instant, quicker than blinking, the shadow slid backward into the trees. Not walked, not ran, but slipped, like darkness folding into itself. Gone. Michael stood trembling on his porch, fists clenched so tight his nails dug into his palms. He didn't know how long he stayed there, staring at the empty tree-line. But he did know one thing. The shadow wasn't afraid of him. It wasn't shy. It wasn't hiding. It was studying him, learning him, waiting for something. And worst of all, Michael knew it would return. There are places humans should not go. Places that hold stories older than memory, older than the earth we walk on. And Michael knew, deep down, that the forest behind his house was one of those places. But fear, mixed with something sharper, something like stubborn defiance, pushed him toward the tree-line anyway. He needed answers. Because the longer he stayed in the dark, the more he felt that thing, learning him, circling him, waiting for the right moment to step out of the shadows. So that afternoon, with the sky a pale gray and the wind carrying a strange stillness, Michael stood at the edge of the woods. The trees rose tall, crowded together like they were guarding something. The shade between them was darker than it should have been, not just from the canopy, but thicker, almost like the shadows themselves were alive. He took a slow breath. "Just in and out," he whispered to himself. "Find where it came from. That's it." But the woods didn't welcome him. He could feel it the moment he stepped off the grass and onto the dead leaves. The temperature dropped. The air grew dense, heavy, like walking underwater. Every sound felt muffled, even the crunch beneath his boots. He walked slowly, eyes shifting from trunk to trunk. He expected birds, or squirrels, or at least the buzzing of insects. But there was nothing. Not a single sound. Not a single movement. The forest was silent in a way that wasn't natural. After a few minutes, Michael found himself deeper than he meant to go. The trees were packed tighter now, their branches arching high above, swallowing the light. He stopped, exhaling sharply. And that's when he saw it. A tree, split down the center. Not from lightning, not from decay, but torn open, clawed open, as if something had ripped its way through the trunk. Deep gouges carved the wood, long, unnatural, curved like the mark of fingers too long to be human. Michael reached out, running his fingertips over the marks. The wood was cold, not cool, cold, like stone left in the dark. A shiver crawled up his spine. Suddenly, the air shifted. Just a faint change, but enough to raise the hairs on the back of his neck. He turned, and that's when he noticed the footprints. The same elongated, narrow tracks he had seen at his porch, now trailing deeper into the forest, pressed lightly into the soil, spaced too far apart, as if something moved without weight, gliding rather than walking. He followed them carefully. The deeper he went, the more twisted the woods became. Branches warped into crooked shapes. Roots bulged unnaturally from the ground like bones. The air grew colder, the shadows thicker. Then he heard it, a soft, distant hum. Not a voice, not an animal, something in between, a vibration, like air trembling. Michael's heartbeat quickened. He moved closer, following the sound, step by step, breath by breath, and then he reached a small clearing. The first thing he noticed was the smell, old earth mixed with something metallic, like rust or dried blood. The second thing was the depression in the ground. A large hollow, circular, as if something had been resting there. Something tall, thin, and not human. Broken branches, crushed leaves, twisted grass all radiated outward from the center, forming a strange pattern around the clearing. Michael stared at the hollow in the earth, and then he saw the deer, or what was left of it. A carcass lay against a fallen log, but it wasn't torn open the way predators kill. There were no bite marks, no blood spilled. Instead, the deer looked drained, hollowed out, skin sagging like the insides had been emptied without cutting it open. Michael jerked back, nearly tripping over his own feet. His breathing turned sharp. "What the hell?" he whispered, voice shaking. A twig snapped behind him. He spun instantly. Nothing. But the forest felt different now. Heavier. Closer. He wiped sweat from his brow, but his hand came away cold. He turned back toward the clearing, trying to calm his breath, and then something shifted at the edge of his vision. A shape, a movement, a tilt, like a head emerging from behind a tree. Michael froze. Very slowly, he lifted his eyes, and there it was, half hidden behind a thick oak. A black silhouette, impossibly thin, its height stretching too far upward to be human. It wasn't moving, not walking, just standing there, watching, its head tilted, the same unnatural angle he saw before, like a creature studying its prey. Michael stumbled backward, breath strangled. The shadow didn't follow, didn't chase. It simply leaned, leaning out of the darkness, just enough for him to see its outline, to see it knew he was here, that he had stepped into its place, that he had found its resting ground. A whisper slid through the clearing, not from a mouth, from everywhere, a long, slow, dragging hiss. Michael's pulse hammered. He turned, bolting out of the clearing, branches whipping his arms, roots snagging his boots. He didn't care about the noise, didn't care about the direction. He just ran. Behind him, somewhere deep in the trees, something moved. Not fast, not rushing, but following, gliding, keeping pace, like it wanted him to know. It wasn't done with him. Not yet. There are moments in life when the body reacts before the mind can understand. Instinct takes over, panic surges, breath turns into a weapon of survival. For Michael, running was not a choice. It was the only thing his body allowed him to do the moment he realized the shadow was following him. He didn't look back at first, didn't want to. Branches slapped his arms. Roots snagged his boots. Every heartbeat pounded in his ears like a drum urging him forward. But no matter how fast he ran, he could feel it. A presence, gliding behind him, never touching the ground, yet moving effortlessly through the trees as if the forest parted for it. The air grew colder the deeper he went. His breath turned sharp. His lungs burned. Finally, when the adrenaline pushed him into a near stumble, he risked a glance over his shoulder, and his blood turned to ice. There, weaving between the trees, was the silhouette. Not running, not rushing, just gliding, smooth, silent, matching his pace without effort, like a shadow tethered to him, its head tilted slightly, studying him even as it moved. "Oh God!" Michael's voice cracked in panic. He pushed harder. He could see the faint brightness of the forest edge ahead, sunlight filtering through the thinning trees. Almost out, almost safe. But then, the woods changed. The trees grew tighter together. Branches twisted downward. The path he came from no longer looked familiar. He didn't recognize any of it. "Come on, come on." He forced the words out like a prayer. The shadow's movement changed. Its arms, long, thin, reaching, extended outward, not toward him, but toward the ground. And the forest responded. Branches shifted, leaves rustled in unnatural unison. The air thickened until it felt like something invisible was closing in around him. Michael choked on his breath. He wasn't just being followed. He was being herded, directed, pushed somewhere. "No, no, not that way," he gasped, realizing he was being guided deeper, not outward. He veered sharply left, forcing his way through a thorny bush. A long, sharp branch tore his arm open, blood dripping onto the forest floor. He gritted his teeth but kept going. The shadow slowed, stopped. Its head lifted slightly, like it was smelling the air, sensing the drop of blood. Michael didn't wait to see what it would do next. He sprinted harder than he ever had in his life. And then, a break in the trees. Light. Real sunlight. The forest opened just enough for him to see his house. Far in the distance, but visible. He bolted toward it. Branches snapped behind him. The air trembled with that low, dragging hiss. The sound of something waking, stretching, following. He didn't look back. Didn't dare. He burst out of the tree line, stumbling into the open field behind his property. His legs nearly gave out from the sudden brightness. He fell to his knees, gasping, palms sinking into the grass. For several seconds, everything was silent. The forest loomed behind him, dark, patient, breathing. Michael swallowed hard and turned his head slowly, terrified of what he might see. Nothing. The shadow did not step out. It hovered just inside the darkness, barely visible, like a black stain etched into the shade of the trees. Its shape seemed to waver, flickering like smoke caught in wind. It didn't move forward, didn't chase him into the light, but its head tilted, watching, marking him, letting him know that running didn't matter. Michael forced himself to stand, legs trembling. He backed away toward his house, keeping his eyes on the tree line. The shadow remained exactly where the sunlight ended, as if something ancient and absolute held it there. When he reached his porch, he whispered to himself, "You can't come out. You can't step into the light." But the forest didn't care what he believed, because then something happened that froze him in place. The shadow lifted an arm, slowly, smoothly, pointing directly at him. Michael's breath shattered in his chest. It was the first deliberate motion he had ever seen it make. A message, a promise, a claim. The forest wind picked up, brushing cold air across the fields. And just as he stepped backward onto his porch, the shadow lowered its arm and took one single, impossible step forward. One step into the sunlight. Not fully, not completely, but enough for the darkness around its foot to flicker, burn, recoil like smoke touched by flame. It paused, testing the boundary, testing the rules. And Michael understood one horrifying truth. It was learning how to cross. He slammed his front door shut, locked it, backed away trembling, his heart thundering against his ribs. The forest was changing. The rules were changing. And whatever that thing was, it was adapting. Michael didn't remember falling asleep, but he remembered waking up. And what woke him wasn't a sound. It was the absence of sound. No crickets, no wind through the cornfield, no distant hum of a truck on the county road, just silence. A thick, heavy kind of silence that felt almost unnatural. He sat up slowly on his bed. The moonlight bleeding through the window painted pale stripes across the wooden floor. The air felt colder than it should have been, almost like the moment before a thunderstorm, when the world holds its breath. Then Michael heard it. Crack. A faint snap, like a dry stalk of corn breaking. He froze. That sound came from outside, near the field behind his house. Crack, crack, shuffle. Someone was walking out there. No, something. Michael slipped out of bed and crossed the room, careful not to make the floor creak. He pulled aside the curtain just an inch, only enough to look outside. The cornfield swayed gently under the moonlight, but there was no wind. His breath caught. At the very edge of the field, where the rows of corn met the tree line, something stood there, perfectly still. A figure, tall, thin, the body unnaturally elongated like a shadow stretched too far by the setting sun. Michael blinked hard. It didn't go away. The shape seemed to lean slightly to one side, as if its neck wasn't holding the head properly. The arms hung lower than any human's arms should. And its legs. God, its legs were wrong. They were long, bent in strange angles, like it hadn't learned how to use them. Yet it stood there, watching his house. Michael stepped back from the window, heart pounding so hard it vibrated in his ribs. He suddenly felt exposed, like if he looked too long, it would look back. He forced his breathing to slow. Then, crack. Closer this time. Michael jolted, turning his head toward the window again. That figure. It was gone. He scanned the field quickly, eyes darting between the corn rows. Everything looked still again. Too still. Michael backed away and sat on the edge of his bed, rubbing his face with shaking hands. "Get a grip," he whispered to himself. "It's just your imagination." But he didn't believe it. His imagination didn't make the sound of footsteps. His imagination didn't break stalks of corn. And something else. Something much worse. Michael realized he never heard the footsteps going away. He only heard them coming closer. He forced himself to lie down and stare at the ceiling, but sleep wouldn't come. Every few seconds, he found himself looking toward the window, half expecting a long, distorted face pressed against the glass. The minutes crawled by like hours. Then he heard it again. Tap. A light sound, soft, almost polite, like a single knuckle tapping glass. Michael's body stiffened from head to toe. Tap, tap. Someone was tapping on his window. "No," he whispered, voice cracking. He turned his head slowly, terrified of what he would see. At first, he saw nothing. Just the moonlit curtain swaying slightly. Then the tapping came again. Tap. This time, harder, more insistent. Michael couldn't breathe. He forced himself to stand and take one shaky step toward the window, then another. His fingers trembled as he reached for the curtain. Before he could touch it, tap, tap, tap. Faster, louder, almost frantic. Michael jerked back in fear. The tapping suddenly stopped. Silence. The curtain hung motionless. Michael swallowed hard, every instinct screaming at him to run, to hide, to call someone, anyone. But he just stood there, frozen. Very slowly, he reached out and pulled the curtain aside. Nothing. Only the empty yard bathed in moonlight. But then he noticed something on the window. Something smeared across the surface. Michael leaned closer. It was a long, dark streak, like a fingerprint dragged across the glass. But it was too long, too thin. No human finger could make a mark like that. His stomach dropped. Something had touched the window. Then, a whisper, so faint he thought he imagined it. Right outside the glass. Right beside his ear. Michael. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the edge of his bed. No. No one knew what he saw the other day. No one knew about the figure in the forest. No one knew he had been watching it. How could it know his name? His mouth went dry. His vision blurred with panic. He backed up until his shoulders hit the wall. Outside, the cornfield swayed again. But this time, it wasn't the wind. Something was moving through it, fast, moving away. Michael stood there shaking long after the whispers vanished. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. He just listened, eyes wide, waiting for the footsteps to return. The next morning, Michael looked like he hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under his eyes, hands shaking every time he reached for something. His mind kept replaying that whisper, his name, spoken from the other side of the glass. He tried to convince himself it was a dream, a half-sleep hallucination, stress, anything. But the smear on the window, the long, unnatural streak, that was real. Michael sat at the kitchen table, staring at his untouched breakfast, when his phone buzzed. It was a text from Mrs. Ellen Harris. "Michael, could you come to the hospital? Harris wants to speak to you." Michael froze. Mr. Harris wanted to see him? His heart skipped. He typed back quickly, "I'll be there in 15. The hospital in their quiet Tennessee county wasn't big. Just one long hallway of rooms, a small emergency wing, and a reception lobby with old magazines from last year. As Michael walked through the front door, he felt a strange heaviness in the air. Like the building itself knew something was wrong. Mrs. Ellen stood in the hallway, her hands clasped tightly together. She perked up as she saw him approaching. "Michael, thank you for coming," she said softly. Michael managed a nod. "How is he?" She hesitated. Her lips trembled just a little. "He's awake, but not truly here. He keeps drifting in and out. And he's afraid, Michael. Terrified." They walked together toward the room at the end of the hall. And before they even entered, Michael could hear it. A soft, raspy muttering. A voice trembling like someone trapped between sleep and nightmare. Mrs. Ellen pushed open the door. Mr. Harris lay on the hospital bed, eyes half open, staring at the ceiling as if he were following something no one else could see. His breathing was shallow, uneven. His fingers twitched under the white blanket. "Harris," Ellen whispered, touching his arm gently. "Michael is here." The muttering stopped. Mr. Harris's eyes shifted, slowly, painfully, toward Michael. And for a moment, Michael wished he had never come, because the look in those eyes was more than fear. It was recognition, almost like he expected Michael. The older man swallowed hard. When he spoke, his voice was barely a rasp. "You saw it, didn't you, boy?" Michael's throat tightened. His hands grew cold. He nodded. Mr. Harris closed his eyes tightly, as if confirming that truth physically hurt him. Then he whispered, "It comes out more often now, since that night. I should have never gone deeper into those woods." Michael stepped closer. "What happened in there, sir?" Mr. Harris's jaw trembled. His eyes glistened with a mix of exhaustion and terror. "There's something in that forest, not living, not dead, something that watches." He swallowed. "It took the hunter first, years ago. Then it stayed, waiting, learning the way we walk, The way we sound, the way we move in the dark. Ellen gasped. Harris, please, don't push yourself. It touched me, he continued, ignoring her. His hand rose slightly, shaking violently as he pointed to his shoulder. Michael's stomach dropped. It put a hand right here. He winced. Cold, so cold it burned. Michael stepped forward unconsciously. What did it want? Mr. Harris's eyes widened. It wanted to follow me out, to step beyond the trees. But it can't, not fully, not yet. His voice cracked. It used me to cross, just a little, and now it's searching for something else, someone else. A chill crawled up Michael's spine. He suddenly felt like the room was colder. Why me? He whispered. Mr. Harris's lips parted slowly, painfully, because it remembers your face. It saw you watching, and once it sees you, his eyes fixed on Michael, sharp and terrified. It never stops. Michael staggered backward. His heart pounded so hard he felt it in his throat. Then suddenly, Mr. Harris arched his back violently, gasping. The monitor beeped wildly. Ellen screamed, "Harris! Harris!" Nurses rushed in, pushing Michael aside, crowding around the bed. "Sir, stay with us." BP dropping. "Get Dr. Sims now." Michael stood frozen in the doorway, watching the chaos swirl around the man who moments ago had whispered truths he didn't want to hear. Mr. Harris's face twisted, not in pain, but in horror. His eyes didn't look at the doctors. They looked past them, toward the dark corner of the room. Michael followed that gaze, and saw it, just for a moment. A shape, unmoving, a silhouette that shouldn't have been there. Tall, bent, wrong in every way a living thing can be wrong. Then, the lights flickered, once, twice, and the shape vanished. Mr. Harris's body went limp. The monitor flatlined. Time of death. A doctor began. Ellen collapsed over her husband, sobbing. Michael stumbled backward into the hallway, the world spinning around him, because he understood something now. The figure from the forest, the one that touched Harris, the one that whispered his name. It wasn't tied to the woods anymore. It was getting stronger, and it knew exactly where to find him. The drive home from the hospital felt longer than usual, much longer. Michael kept glancing at the rearview mirror every few seconds, not really looking for cars, but for something else. Something tall, something thin, something that now knew his name. Every shadow along the road made his shoulders tense. Every tree that passed under the headlights looked like it was leaning too close. When he finally reached his driveway, he didn't get out immediately. He sat in the truck with the keys still in the ignition, hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles went white. His house sat quiet and dark against the Tennessee dusk. But tonight, it didn't feel like home. It felt like a place where something might already be waiting for him. Watching, listening. Michael exhaled shakily and opened the door. The gravel crunched under his boots, loud in the otherwise silent night. Too loud. He walked up the steps, unlocked the door, and slipped inside. and nearly collapsed with relief when he saw the lights still off. Nothing seemed disturbed, but he kept the porch light on behind him, just in case. He didn't sit, didn't turn on the lamp, didn't take off his jacket. He just stood in the living room, breathing softly, trying to convince himself that he was safe. But something bothered him. A sound. Soft. Subtle. He frowned. It wasn't coming from inside the house. It was coming from the yard. S-H-H-H-H-H. 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 A sound like fabric brushing against tall grass. Like something gliding through the cornfield. Michael's heartbeat stuttered. He stepped toward the window and lifted the curtain only a fraction, and froze. There were footprints in the dew-covered grass. Long, narrow, almost like drag marks. They started at the tree line near the cornfield, and stopped right in the center of his yard. Just stopped. Like someone, or something, had been standing there for a long time, watching his house. Michael dropped the curtain. A cold sweat broke across the back of his neck. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." He backed away slowly, his breath growing uneven. He needed to call someone. The sheriff. A neighbor. Anybody. His hand reached for his phone. Thud. A sound hit the side of the house. Hard. Michael's lungs locked. He stared at the wall, eyes wide, listening. Silence. Then, thud. Harder this time. It came from the outside wall right behind him. Something was out there. Something was pressing against the wood siding, like it was feeling its way along the surface. Michael swallowed hard and forced himself to move toward the kitchen, away from the sound. But the thing outside followed. Thud, thud, tap, 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 thud. Like it was dragging its hand across the house, tracing it, searching. Michael's phone nearly slipped from his shaking fingers. He dialed the sheriff's number, but before he could hit call, everything went silent again. Absolutely silent. Even the insects had stopped. Then, a creak above him. The attic. Michael's blood ran cold. He turned his head slowly upward. Another creak. Something was up there. Something moving across the wooden boards. No, no, the attic door was locked. It had been locked for years. He backed into the hallway until his shoulders hit the wall. A long, slow scrape traveled across the ceiling, directly above him, like fingers trailing along the boards. Michael's breath quickened. Then, bang. Something hit the attic floor so hard dust rained down through the ceiling vent. Michael stumbled back, nearly tripping. He stared at the attic door at the end of the hallway. The old wooden door began to rattle. Slowly, softly, like someone was pressing a hand against the inside. Michael felt his heart tearing at his ribs. He whispered to himself, "Don't come down, please don't come down." Then, the rattling stopped. Silence. The house felt like it was holding its breath. Michael took one step back toward the living room. Creak. The attic door hinge shifted. Just an inch. Just enough to show blackness behind it. Michael choked on a gasp. Another inch. Then another. The door didn't swing open fast. It opened like something with the wrong kind of limbs was pushing it slowly, gently, savoring the moment. Michael stared at the darkness inside the attic, and then, from the shadows, a shape moved, not stepping out, not crawling, just shifting, as if adjusting its impossibly long limbs to fit through the narrow doorway. Michael stumbled backward, whispering, "No, no, no, no." Then, it stopped, half concealed in darkness, and whispered, "Michael." The same voice from the window, soft, cold, close, too close. Michael bolted for the front door, ripping it open, sprinting into the yard without looking back. He didn't stop running. Not when his lungs burned. Not when tears blurred his vision. Not even when he reached the edge of the road. Because he finally understood the truth. Whatever followed Mr. Harris out of the woods, whatever whispered through his window, whatever now crawled inside his attic, had learned how to enter his home, and it wanted him. Michael didn't remember how long he ran. His legs burned. His lungs felt like they were tearing apart. But fear pushed him forward, step after desperate step, until he reached the old county road. A pair of headlights appeared in the distance. For a terrifying second, he thought it was the creature, stretching itself into a shape made of light and shadow. But as the engine grew louder, Michael recognized the familiar shape of a patrol truck. Sheriff Dalton's truck. Michael staggered into the middle of the road, waving both arms. The brakes screeched. The truck swerved slightly, then stopped. The sheriff jumped out immediately. "Michael, Jesus boy, what the hell are you doing out here?" Dalton barked. Michael could barely speak. "Sheriff, something's in my house." Something was in the attic. Dalton grabbed him by the shoulders. "Slow down. You're shaking like a damn leaf." Michael inhaled hard, trying to steady himself. "It followed me, Sheriff. From the woods. From Harris's place. It opened the attic door. It whispered my name." Dalton sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose like a man already exhausted by a long day. "Michael, listen to me. I know you're shaken up. I know what happened to Harris scared the whole county, but there ain't no such thing as." A sound echoed through the trees. Soft, slow, long, like something dragging itself across the forest floor. Michael flinched. "Sheriff, please, just check the house." Dalton hesitated, but he saw the terror in Michael's eyes, and for the first time, doubt flickered across his face. "Fine," he muttered, unlocking the passenger door. "Get in the truck. We'll take a look." The drive back up the gravel path felt unreal. Michael stared at the house, dark, still, quiet, as if it were holding its breath again. "I left in a hurry," he whispered. "The front door's probably still open." Dalton placed a hand near the holster on his hip. "You stay behind me, you hear?" Michael nodded. The sheriff pushed the front door open with the barrel of his flashlight. The beam cut through the dusty air inside. Everything looked normal. Too normal. "See," Dalton said. "No intruders. No forced entry. Nothing damaged." Michael stayed silent. Sheriff Dalton walked farther into the living room, boots creaking on the old floorboards. "Look, son. I get it. Fear messes with the mind, especially at night." But then, the house answered him. Thud. A heavy, deliberate knock from above. From the attic. Michael's entire body jolted. "There. Did you hear that?" Dalton's flashlight beam wavered slightly, but he masked his surprise with a scowl. Old houses settle. Wood expands. Wind can. Thud. Harder. Angrier. Dust fell from the ceiling vent. Dalton froze completely this time. "Okay," he whispered. "That wasn't the wind." The sheriff swallowed, then marched down the hallway, trying to look braver than he felt. Michael followed slowly. They stopped at the base of the attic stairs. The door was slightly open, exactly as Michael had left it. Dalton pressed 2 fingers against the wood and nudged it wider. The smell hit them before the darkness did. Cold. Damp. Like soil freshly dug up. Dalton shined his flashlight into the attic. Nothing. Just old boxes. Cobwebs. Dust floating through the beam like falling snow. "There's nothing here," he exhaled. Michael didn't relax, because he realized something. The attic was too quiet. No settling wood. No shifting weight. Not even the faint echo of the last thud. Like whatever had been up there had already moved on. "Sheriff," Michael whispered, "we need to leave. Now." Dalton shook his head. "No. I'm not leaving until I check." Slam. A door somewhere deeper in the house shut violently. Dalton spun around. Michael felt his heart jump into his throat. "That came from the back bedroom," Dalton muttered. They walked slowly toward the end of the hallway, the sheriff sweeping his flashlight across each doorway. Everything was still. Everything was silent. Dalton reached for the bedroom door handle. Michael grabbed his arm. "Sheriff, don't open it." Dalton hesitated, then twisted the knob anyway. The door opened with a long, trembling creak. The room was empty, but the closet door at the far end was cracked open. Only an inch. Only enough for someone, or something, to be hiding behind it. Dalton exhaled sharply through his nose. "I'm checking it." He stepped forward. Michael stayed frozen near the doorway, gripping the frame so hard his fingers hurt. As Dalton approached the closet, his flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. "Come on," Dalton hissed, shaking it. The beam steadied. Dalton reached out, touched the closet door, and pulled it open. Nothing. Clothes. Shoeboxes. Dust. No creature. Dalton let out a relieved, almost triumphant sigh. "See. Nothing but." His voice cut off, because behind the hanging clothes, behind the coats and jackets, a shape slowly unfolded. Tall. Thin. Wrong. It unfolded the way a shadow stretches when a light bends, limbs sliding out of angles that no living thing could make. Dalton's flashlight trembled in his hand. The creature leaned forward slightly, just enough for its head to tilt into the beam of light. No eyes, No mouth, just blackness, a void shaped like a face. Dalton stumbled backward, hand flying to his gun. Michael choked on a breath. The creature leaned farther forward, and in a voice that wasn't a voice, cold, dry, empty, it whispered, "Sheriff." Dalton drew his gun, but the light flickered out. The room went black. Michael screamed. Darkness swallowed the room whole. Michael felt it press against his skin. Thick, cold, suffocating. The sheriff's flashlight had died. His gun was somewhere in the dark. And the creature, the thing from the woods, was no longer in the closet. Michael's heart hammered so violently he thought it might burst. He reached out blindly in the blackness. "Sheriff," he whispered. No answer. Only the sound of slow, unnatural breathing. Not human. Not animal. Something in between. Michael edged backward until his spine hit the hallway wall. His fingers slipped on the wood. His breath trembled in the chilling dark. A soft shuffle brushed past him. He flinched, swallowing a gasp. "Sheriff, where are you?" Then, a whisper floated through the black. "Michael." Not the sheriff's voice. Not even close. The creature was close. Too close. Michael's body locked up. He pressed himself tighter to the wall, chest rising and falling in terrified bursts. From somewhere on the floor came a faint metallic clink. A gun. "Sheriff?" He tried again. Finally, a low groan. "Boy, run." It was Dalton. Barely conscious. Barely alive. Michael dropped to his knees, searching wildly in the dark until his fingers brushed fabric, Dalton's sleeve. "Sheriff, get up. We have to leave." A trembling hand reached up, gripping Michael's arm. "No," Dalton rasped. "You go. It's after you." Michael felt tears burn his eyes. He shook his head furiously. "I'm not leaving you." A sound cut him off. A long, slow inhalation. Right above them. Michael froze. Something was leaning over them. Its presence towering, bending down, filling the space with a cold that sank deep into the bones. Dalton's fingers slipped from Michael's arm. "Run," he whispered. "Run now, before it." Creak. The floorboards groaned as the creature shifted weight. Then a long, thin limb brushed Michael's shoulder. He couldn't help it. He screamed and bolted toward the hallway, crashing into walls, fumbling blindly toward the faintest sliver of moonlight coming from the front door. Behind him, something slid across the floor. Fast. Michael sprinted down the hallway, stumbling into the living room. "Don't look back." His mind screamed it. But he did. Just once. A silhouette filled the hallway, limb after limb unfurling, stretching, reaching. No face, only darkness. Michael turned and fled out the front door, bursting into the cold night air. His boots skidded on the porch steps, nearly sending him tumbling, but adrenaline kept him upright. He sprinted across the yard. The cornfield loomed ahead, the same place he'd seen the figure standing nights ago. Behind him, the creature stepped out of the house. And the way it moved, silent, gliding, wrong, made the world feel unreal. Michael tore through the corn, pushing stalks aside, panting, gasping, praying he could outrun it. But the thing didn't chase him with footsteps. It didn't need to. Its voice followed him. Michael, calling him deeper, calling him back. He burst out of the field onto the dirt path leading toward the woods. And for the first time in his life, Michael ran toward the forest. Branches slashed at his arms. Roots caught his feet. But he didn't stop. He didn't know why he ran there. Maybe instinct. Maybe madness. Maybe the same pull that had lured Harris into the trees. Maybe the creature wanted him there, and he was running straight into its territory. The woods grew darker, denser, quieter, until all sound vanished except Michael's ragged breath. Then he stopped. He wasn't alone. The trees around him pulsed with a strange, suffocating heaviness, like the whole forest was leaning in, listening. A shape coalesced between the trunks, not walking, not stepping, forming, stretching upward like a shadow being pulled off the ground. Michael's voice trembled. "What do you want from me?" The creature tilted its head. A soft crack, like a branch breaking. Then, in a voice that sounded like wind inside a hollow tree, it whispered, "To finish what he started." Michael's blood ran cold. The missing hunter, the stories, the sightings, whatever this thing was, whoever it had once belonged to, it had been waiting years for someone else to see it, to acknowledge it, to give it shape. Michael backed away slowly. "You can't come with me," he whispered. The creature leaned forward. "I already have." Then, the woods exploded with motion. Branches snapped. Leaves whipped violently in a sudden wind. A light, faint, flickering, appeared behind Michael. He turned. Sheriff Dalton, pale, bleeding, but standing. A flashlight in one hand, gun in the other. "Michael, move." Michael dove sideways. Dalton fired once, twice, 3 times. The shots ripped through the trees. The creature shrieked. Not loud, but high, thin, piercing, like reality itself was being pulled apart. The shadows folded inward, collapsed, and in a blink, it was gone. Gone as if the darkness had swallowed itself whole. Michael lay on the forest floor, gasping. Dalton limped toward him, barely standing. "You okay?" he wheezed. Michael nodded through shaking breaths. What was that thing?" Dalton shook his head slowly. "No idea, but we're not going to face it alone. Not anymore. It's time the whole damn county knows what's out here." Michael stared into the depths of the woods, and for a moment, just for a heartbeat, he thought he saw something shift between the trees. A tall shadow, watching, waiting, not gone, never gone, just pushed deeper, back into the place where it was born. The forest exhaled softly, and the night swallowed the last of the whisper. Michael,